Jonah Blake, thank you so much for joining me today. Super excited to chat with you. All right, Jonah, you are a founder, investor, and influencer, and you are actually the founder of Game Fund Partners. And within that, you have a few entities. So, but before diving into all of that, I'd love to hear about your background and how you got involved in Web3.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It is the morning at time of recording, so I currently look like Voldemort here, but that's okay. I call these bull market eyes. That's what these are.
I like it. I need some.
Yeah, you will. You'll have the same. But yeah, that's true. I'm the founder of Game Fund Partners. My background, I started in media. Promise there's no nepotism, but I started working at my father's media company. I built out a division of that company, which was our gaming and esports division. We did back end media. It wasn't front end. So the idea was we were kind of like a Costco of wholesale. So I always made the joke when I was like interviewing clients and like doing deals. They would say, Jonah, what does your business really do? Like, you don't have a front end publisher. How do you sell media? I'm like, well, we're like Costco. If CNN wants anti-Trump news, we'll sell it to CNN. If Fox wants pro-Trump news, we'll sell it on the same day. And that was how we actually ran the business. Our business was just getting the most information possible and then reselling it to a bunch of websites on the internet, because all those websites need content in order to sell ads. So that's what our business was. At the time, I just started doing the gaming stuff because we didn't have that yet. And within about 2 years, it became one of our most profitable sides of the business. Wow. So I was like an entrepreneur. That led me into esports before the calamity of esports. But at the time, there was something called picture-in-picture advertising, as well as just general esports, like sponsor buying. Twitch was like growing. This was before COVID. Twitch was growing crazy, and esports was like really picking up. And every VC, every investor wanted access to esports at the time. And I was working in advertising around that at that moment. I had done a gig with a couple of partners, and I ended up going to an IRL event and meeting some investors, and they were like, "Hey, we have no associates that know anything about gaming or esports. We're interested in potentially investing in that space." And granted, this was like 2017, 2018. I think people don't realize how new investing in games from a VC perspective actually is. This is not like what it's been. It's been normally publishers or studios writing the big checks, not VCs. And so I just was like right place, right time. And I would consult, for little bits of money here and there to like, I was learning about VC at the same time they were learning about gaming. So I had really started learning about all the investment stuff. And that was a good time. And then I was already in crypto. Like, I was doing my own personal stuff, but I didn't have like a crypto business yet. We'll get to how that happened. But I got a call from some powerful people in the Midwest. And one of them was in Ohio. And they're like, PASPA, or I think it was PASPA, professional sports. It's been a long time. But basically, the federal sports betting laws were changing, and every state had its own ability to make its own sports betting rules. And there were states that were very anti-sports betting, and there were states that were very pro. Ohio happened to be very pro at the time. I don't know what it is now. It's been many years, but it happens to be it was pro at the time. And the person that consulted with me was like, "Hey, we love esports. We'd like to include esports betting into the laws here, but we know nothing about it. Would you like write up some stuff?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll write up some stuff. Like, here's what I would do if I were passing a sports betting law with esports." I thought it was just going to be an exercise that they would take back to their team. And I got a call 2 weeks later, and they're like, "Hey, so we have a lot of connections in Ohio. Would you like to fly to Columbus for a day and go testify in front of state senate on your language?" And I was 25 at the time. So when you're 25 and you want to make it in life, you try and say yes as much as possible. I was like, okay. I had more hair back then. Now I have less hair, unfortunately. But I was there. I was scared. I was scared beyond my mind. I was already, at the time, I was scared enough of like presenting in front of normal people, and let alone like real politicians. I did it without passing out, thank God. It went well. And I think about a year or two later, the governor of Ohio passed a sports betting law with some of my language in it.
Wow.
And so I used that to then start my own small fund, which became Game Fund Partners. I was like, all right, well, now let me try doing this. I co-founded it with my father because no one was going to give a 25-year-old any real amount of money. who hadn't worked in investments before. You'd be out of your mind. But my father had worked in investments, so I used him more than he used me, actually. He probably would agree. So we started it. We did some SPVs. We're investors in a couple of companies now, one of which I don't think I can publicly say, but you and I know on the back end just because like they're very secretive. But we probably play the game once a day, is what I would say. You would know the company. Other ones are Discord and Maximum Entertainment. We own a large voting block in Maximum Entertainment. And Discord was, we put money into that before the Web3 NFT stuff went crazy. So the usage went way up. So we were happy with that one. And while I was doing this, I was like, I'm really into crypto. I'd gotten into NFTs quite early. In fact, you and I first met and we were talking about the crypto punks. And my dad often recalls, he's like, I remember when Andrew said these punks are going to like $2 million. As we're recording this now, I just saw a listing for 14 million. I don't know if you saw that bid. That was crazy.
14.7.
$14.7 million. We're officially in the bull. But I started this podcast for fun, talking about Web3 gaming, because personally, I was writing about Web3 gaming as early as 2018, and I was always interested, but I didn't have a way to like work in the business. But I knew a lot about it. I was trading it, and I started a podcast just for fun. Didn't expect to make money. I thought it'd be just like a fun advertisement for the fund. All of a sudden, I got an offer to get sponsored, and then another sponsor, and I was like, oh wow, like, this is a business. So I created an entity for it that the fund mostly owned. So it was like an incubated company. That led to more sponsors. And then all of a sudden I was consulting again. Like I started in consulting. Now I'm back to consulting. That consulting on a basic level led to a much larger business, which we have today. And I was like, okay, I'll take an angel, checks into Real Third Web, the company. So the co-founder of Axie Infinity, Ready Player DAO, and a personal friend of mine who sold Land Vault to AdMix last year. They're like, sure, we'll write you a small check. Let's see what you can do. And man, we blew it out of the water. And so now this year, I'm like, okay, we can't have two companies that are basically almost doing the same thing. So Real Third Web is going to be completely absorbed by Game Fund. It's going to be one entity. And we could talk more about it in the show where that's going to go and what that means. But long story short, that's where we're here today. I've had almost 15 clients now in the last year and a half.
Wow.
We do basically end-to-end advisory. We've done token advisory. We've done NFT infrastructure. We use our third-party clients to set up all their Discord infrastructure and security. I do their content strategy. The one thing games hate is dealing with influencers. So I do all the creator management. Like we do their W8s, their W9s, the contracts. They send us the money. We'll release it when they make content. I do the influencing. We have our show. What was a little podcast turned into, I would say, very early days, something similar to Delphi. I will say that Delphi, I'm like very good friends with. So like we're definitely not competitors in any way. In fact, like they're really nice people. We talk all the time. But I'm definitely inspired by Delphi in terms of the model that we're going for now.
It's amazing. Wow. Yeah, no, Delphi, those guys are incredible. I also definitely got inspiration from them early on with kind of my content and the investing as well. All right, so take me back to when you first discovered Web3. Like, what was it? Because, you were very interested in gaming, so I could see that there's some correlation there. But, gaming and Web3, there's still kind of like, and this is a topic I want to dive into later, but like in a much deeper way. But they're kind of still a little separate. Like gaming is purely about having fun in general. And then Web3 is mostly about making money. And so I guess like how did you become involved in Web3? Because you already had that interest in gaming.
Yeah, actually, I became interested in Web3 where it had nothing to do with gaming. Actually, my first article was saying that gaming wasn't ready yet for crypto. I think it is now. But at the time in 2018, I was like, no, this is not ready.
Yeah.
But what happened was I had just gotten out of school and I had an idea for a startup. And it was I had a buddy who I grew up with here in Florida. Dude was like, he's still alive, thank God. But dude at the time was a total genius. Like I could have seen him become a surgeon or some sort of like incredible doctor. That's what he wanted to do. He was in the medical field. And, but he was also poor. I'm definitely not poor. Like I'm not going to pretend like I'm coming from the streets. I'm absolutely not. I come from, a great life. But he didn't. But I went to public high school. I didn't go to private high school. So the thing about being a public high school, middle school is you get to be a part of, all walks of life. And this is a guy I ended up becoming like best friends with. And we were getting ready to go to college. I was going to go to New York at the time. He was going to go to UCF. He went to UCF, I think, for like a year. And then what happened, we were talking. He's like, I can't afford to continue going to UCF. I'm like, why? What's up? He's like, I can't afford the student debt. Like, because he had no money for college. He didn't have like a crazy scholarship, but he had the intelligence and the GPA to go to med school. And what happened to him, I haven't talked to him in a long time, but what happened to him is instead of going to medical school and becoming a doctor, he had to go to the military. He went right. Not that like being in the military is bad, but you want to go to the military. Like hopefully you want to go to the military because that's your choice, right? Not because you're forced to. And I know for a fact it wasn't his choice. It was just the only path for him to get to where he wanted to go.
Wow.
Which is not there's a huge honor in serving in the military. It just wasn't what he believed was his path. So
Totally.
That was kind of depressing in a way. And I was like, man, like we should like figure out student debt. And I was into crypto. I was already like into Ethereum and all this other stuff. Like early, I was around during the ICO days where people were like doing insane ICOs, like Augur. I don't know if you remember Augur.
Yeah, of course.
Like I bought into Augur. That was a good one. But I was like, well, is there a way to do like student debt on the blockchain? And at the time, Acorns, I don't think Acorns existed. But the idea was, okay, is there a way where you could form like a card, like a credit card? And if you went to McDonald's and a cheeseburger, and this was at the time, right? Not adjusted for inflation. A cheeseburger was like $1.50, right? So if you bought a cheeseburger for $1.50, $2, and you rounded up to, I don't know, $2.20 or $1.70, let's say you rounded up 20 cents, 30 cents, is there a way that when you use that card's directly connected to your loan lender, like Nelnet, Naviant, all those, and it would be like a way, like the idea would be there's an app with advertisements like get $5 off something at McDonald's, but because you're there spending money, part of that discount goes into a rebate into your student loan account. So the idea would be the more that you are spending in the economy, the more likely you are to pay off your student debt faster in your lifetime. And that was like a brilliant idea. Like I have the patents still, like I wrote patents and all this stuff, but I learned very quickly, and this is where I got really interested in crypto, that sometimes you can have the greatest idea with the best product market fit, but where you're at in life, as well as the institutions that currently run it, don't necessarily want those things to exist. I did not know, I didn't major in finance. I majored in media. I went to film school. I should be poor, quite frankly, because I went to film school. But I went to film school. I didn't have any knowledge about the financial markets at the time. All I thought was, okay, people of course, student loan lenders are going to want this to be paid off faster. They make more money, which I didn't understand the concept of interest at the time, like in a meaningful way. I didn't understand that the interest accrued is worth a lot more than them paying off the student debt faster. And I also didn't know at the time, there were two other things. One, there was one company, they were competing with SoFi at the time. They're still around, but SoFi ended up winning. But they were doing student debt repayment programs just like this, but only for corporates. So you had to be an employee at a company, and it was an employee benefits package. So they were like, nuh-uh, that's gonna not good for our business. But the bigger problem is, I don't know why this is legal, but it is. Independent companies and private individuals with a lot of money can buy and sell debt on student debt, which I hadn't known at the time, but I got this advice. And so there are very wealthy people with millions and millions of dollars who don't do anything for society other than buying people's debt and accruing effectively their slave labor. Like they're basically modern day slave owners in a way. And this is legal. And so when you have that kind of power, it's not in your interest to have a company like mine have any chance of success. So long story short, genius company name, genius idea. It was called DebtMet. It was the whole thing was great, but it failed because I didn't understand the realities of the market. But that made me really much more interested in crypto because at the time, crypto's changed. But at the time, crypto was this place where anarchy was definitely a part of it. But the bigger thing was trying to make the world a more fair place. I don't know if that's what it is today, but at the time, that's why I was interested. I had like a moral compass, right? Everyone's moral compass changes. But at the time, you just get out of school and you see the world for the first time and you think that the world should walk the way that you want it to walk. But that was a great lesson in a failed startup I did. That was a long story, but that's how I got into crypto.
That's amazing. When in 2014 or no, it was 2016. think it was 2015. I just moved back from the Middle East. I've been living out there for a few years, and I was like, okay, I want to get involved in blockchain. Crypto, I'm unsure about Bitcoin and these other cryptocurrencies, but blockchain is like the real deal. And I tried to do a startup that was a blockchain-based accounting startup for local governments to track their spend from our property taxes. Mm-hmm. So I was like, oh my gosh, if we could have insight into what local governments are spending, then they'd be much more efficient, because the community where your tax dollars are going to this government, the community would pay attention to what they're spending on. And then in theory, it'd lead to better governance, which that's like the most naive idea of all time. Like, of course, no government wants that. No local government would be like, yes, of course we want more transparency and more responsibility in our spending. Like that. It was insane. But it's kind of like what you're talking about, where awesome idea, but the powers that be absolutely would not want that, right? So yeah, no, I definitely agree with you that as you get older, you're like, oh, okay, you can't just kind of try to make the world a better place and make money. It's more so about kind of making money, unfortunately. I think there's still ways to.
No, there is, but the thing is, I think you need to have money first and then try and make the world a better place. Because I don't know, everyone, I think like normal people, and I think I'm a normal person. Maybe not, I'm in crypto, but
I think we're kind of normal, I would say.
We can be, it depends, right? We just trade stuff all day. But I like when you go to school and you're indoctrinated into this idea that you can make a difference if you speak up loudly. But I have not found that to be the case, even though I wish it was. Like when people, for example, when I see these idiots throwing pasta sauce on a painting in the Louvre, I used to think like that. I'm like, okay, you're making a statement, so of course people are going to listen to you. But the reality of the world, unfortunately, and I'm not a pessimist, I'm more of a realist meets optimist, but the reality of the world is money talks and money walks. And if I want to make a difference, I first need to accrue enough wealth to make people listen rather than convince people to listen.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, it's, I know SBF also said something similar. So, it's
hopefully I don't end up in the same way.
Yeah, right.
I'll tell you what, if I end up in MDC Brooklyn, I'll do the exclusive interview with you.
There you go.
Do one, yeah.
No, but Tiffany Fong's like the go-to.
You can be in Tiffany Fong. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. No. Okay. Awesome. All right. So, take me back to, Game Fund. Mm-hmm. So within that, you have real third web and real agency. Can you kind of describe the different moving parts here?
Yeah. So and this is I wouldn't say breaking news that people are seeking this, but everything's kind of changing this year because the real third web business has grown so dramatically in the last year that I got to tell you honestly, there's actually in many ways a much better model in that than even running a fund. And you and I both have been in the fund business, so I can explain that in the podcast. And I have a this is going to be very controversial, but I'll say in the show where I think the future of VC is going. But we'll get to that. But effectively, there were two co's, Game Fund and Real Third Web. Real Third Web has a product called Real Agency. The reality is two things. So I actually have friends at a company called Third Web, and we were talking, and they're like, "Hey, isn't that funny? We both have the same name." And I'm like, they didn't "Oh, hey, change your name or we'll sue you." They were very nice, and they weren't saying to change my name, but we always joke about it. I'm like, these guys are doing a completely different product. I shouldn't even be called Third Web. I'm gonna make the active choice of giving my front-facing product a different name because I'm not even technically Third Web-ish at all from a product standpoint. And since we're friends, I have a lot less issue changing my name than they would changing their name. So basically, Real Third Web is effectively was the holdco, and then the product was Real Agency, which is our NFT community, our advisory services, and all of that. Game Fund was primarily just our SPV fund construction, and they also held assets such as Real Third Web. But because the business has changed, and I try to change with the market, Real Third Web will just get absorbed into Game Fund, so it'll be Game Fund Partners Group, and then the product under it will be Real Agency. So the idea is we have kind of three verticals, an investing vertical, advisory vertical, and then front-facing product vertical. But the investing vertical has kind of shifted and slowed down because I just see other trends that make more sense from an investing standpoint. So for me, our cash flow is significantly better from an agency standpoint. And for the answer for me, all of it is liquidity. You know how it is with funds. You have to wait 5 to 7 years. And even in VC, it's still long, even though it's short.
10 years.
10 years for normal, but even in crypto, even if you do 2 or 3, that's considered long because like this space is so new. It's like, how do you hold something for 3 years unless you really like, unless it's ETH, Bitcoin, some new layer one that has growth, a Solana, or a game publisher that's going to put out multiple titles. It's very hard to stay committed to one and produce real outsized returns for your LPs because like that's your job, right? Like, people forget a VC's job is to produce returns for their LPs. It's like that's the job. So SPVs are great, and I think we're going to make our money on that. But ultimately, and that's not to say we won't keep doing them, but they're cumbersome. Having done over 3 at this point, and that, dude, it's way harder to make an SPV than it is to raise an LP fund.
100%.
And it's basically like being an intern in many ways because you have to do all the research, you have to publicize all the research, you have to then convince investors after you've publicized the alpha that they should do it with you rather than doing it themselves. And on top of that, you have to do all the legal documentation to make sure everything's copacetic. And there's a cost to making each document every time. They're all basically their own entities every time. So it's just exhausting. And the return is not nearly as great as like, I won't say our rates, but I have clients coming in, they're paying us a lot of money. And sometimes we take a token and cash mix. So what happens is I'm already more liquid because I'll take if I really believe in something, we'll take a discounted rate. We'll do everything for them. They'll give us an allocation of their token and, it's vesting 1 year or something. And then, I can start diluting over the course of 2 or 3 years if I decide or if I want to hold it. And our company now effectively, it's a 2-in-1. It isn't a growth company. It does do growth work for studios, but I still have like investor style liquidity from like these advantageous deals that we do. So I'm looking at that. I'm like, I can make way more money and do a lot more good helping games directly. We're getting some token, and we'll disclose that, right? Anything we do, we disclose properly. We do all the legal stuff appropriately. But the outsized return of getting tokens or getting even equity for helping a game plus cash is way better than setting up SPVs or doing an LP fund. It's like not to be fair, like for me, right? Maybe different for you or another, but for me, I'm like 28. I hate sitting for 6 months and trying to raise a fund. It kills me inside. When I think about that, I'm like, wow, I could raise an LP of like 50 million for 6 months, or I could work on 8 games in 6 months and, net, I don't know, $1 million or something. It's just so different for me and I enjoy it. But yeah, I hope that answers it. I might have ADD, so I flip flop.
No, that makes total sense. Cause I was like, okay, I want to hear what Jonah is thinking about, how this is better than a fund potentially, and explaining that you can be paid in tokens. That's incredible. Cause so, you're really putting your money where your mouth is, saying, hey, I like your company. I want to work with you guys.
It's like a venture studio.
Yeah. And, I'm willing to be paid in cash and tokens. I think that's an incredible model. So that's super cool. So it's almost in a sense, it's kind of like a fund a little bit.
It's kind of like a fund, but we just call it a growth company. So like, I love that. And this was my father actually came up with the name. So give him credit. It wasn't me. My dad's a great media person. And, I keep mentioning because we work together on everything. We're like a family business. Like I'm big on family. Like my brother does work with me. Like it's just something that we do. But basically he came up with the name. He's like, you want people to know exactly what it is you do. You're like, we're going to call it Game Fund Partners. It's like, so like when I was younger, and this was because the company's been around for, I don't know, almost 3 to 4 years now. So we've been around long enough. I was like, oh, that sounds stupid. Like we need something cool like Apple or like Uber. Right. It needs to be something that sounds like fancy that you see on an app store. And that was like my immature mind. But now that I'm really doing the work, I'm like, this is the perfect name because every game needs help. So they're partners. We help fund some of these games when we do it's like right on the nose. It's a perfect name. So, yeah, it is kind of like a fund, but I see it as a high growth company. The idea of tokens are really important, but it's not cash liquidity most games need. It's attention liquidity because attention liquidity begets cash liquidity. And almost every game has that issue. And because I literally make content for a living. I went to film school. I know how this all works. I literally have the missing piece that most of these games need is like they do crap. Most of these games, there's some really good ones that do it solo, but a lot of these games in Web3 are very bad at marketing, like horrifically bad. And often it's because their game is bad. But in general, most of them are not good at it. Now, there are some really good ones. Like I'm not the biggest fan of the IP, but an example of one that has like amazing content ability, like far superior, is AMGI Studios, the MyPet Hooligan guys. Like their ability to make content is incredible. You don't have to like the MyPet Hooligan brand to know that their content ability is as good, if not better, than what's in Web 2. The only other one that's not in gaming that has the same ability as Doodles, that's because they bought Golden Wolf. So I'm like, those are the two where I'm like, they don't need my help. Like they could do it on their own. But yeah, that's the way I see it.
That's awesome. Okay, so I guess I want to dig deeper into. Okay, so yeah, I want to dig deeper into the content because, attention liquidity, that's such an interesting way to frame it. And that's absolutely correct. They say like all markets are just flows, why is NVIDIA going up? It's like, oh, well, it's because it's in the, the RIA basket and every RIA is suggesting you, buy NVIDIA. And then like the index funds all have NVIDIA because it reaches a certain market cap, et cetera. So it's just like compounds. And in some sense, that just flows. And in some sense, that's also attention. So how do you view your content creation, and also what types of content are you making? Are you said a podcast, you're making videos, you're making tweets, and I don't know, Twitter Spaces. Like, what do you?
We're doing all of it. So I'll go into my content infrastructure. Like I'll go through what we do and how we do it. But I'll tell you why we are a high growth company, but the biggest specialty we are in is attention liquidity. And the reason I say that is because all Web3 games are inherently financialized. So you need to think financially in a way. But I'll give you an example of a token I didn't make money on because I missed it because I thought too logically. I still don't believe in this token, but they were very good at marketing and they produced attention liquidity. Perfect example is Portal Coin. I don't believe in Portal Coin. I don't believe in the thesis, like for many reasons, but it doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter what I think, and logic doesn't play a role in this scenario because they figured out how to do the Twitter API stuff. They figured out all the farming techniques. They've got these, lizard holders, these creeps who are like fanatical, like it's like a religion, right? It's an actual cult. And attention begets financial liquidity. Because if you're a logic person, and like this is early on in the markets, I made this mistake. I thought too much like a stock person, right? Where the idea was I look at your report, I look at your financials, and therefore your stock should go up, right? Like NVIDIA. Although NVIDIA now is a little frothy, but at the time, NVIDIA, right? But then what happened is GameStop happened. And GameStop, I don't think people realize that GameStop is not a one-off. I think it is a signal of what the rest of the world is going to look like for the next 20 to 30 years, at least.
Ooh, wait, how come? We can go into that, but that's interesting.
So it was the first signal where retail actually started learning how to think like a hedge fund in collective means. Like it's the first time social media has used irrationality to beat the market. And people like investors in like the highbrow sense often think retail doesn't know what they're doing. And they're right and they're wrong. They're right that they don't know from a classical standpoint how to actually read the market. But when the market realizes that they have dominance because they have more audience share, rational thinking no longer matters. It's about being irrational. And the saying from GameStop goes, they can be irrational longer than you can be rational. Because when you have hundreds of thousands of people in it for the memes versus a couple of big people with money in it for the intelligence, sometimes, not all the time, because big money still has like the float. Sometimes retail can beat the big money. And what happens is big money now knows this. So now they're being like careful about it, right? Because if you're big money and you're going to put a short up against her, you don't want to be a GameStop, right? Like you don't want to be, I think it was Citron, I think was the company that got screwed, right? You don't want to be a Citron. I think it's Citron. I will sound stupid if it turns out it's not, but whatever. You don't want to be that company and be like, I took the bet against retail and I lost. Because if you lose against retail as a highbrow investor, you're not taken seriously anymore. because it's like known in the hedge fund like market, like you don't lose to retail. Like the house isn't supposed to lose. So if the house loses, you're no longer a valuable like house to represent. So if you're a logical investor, the most logical thing is to think illogically, automatically. And this is where you go into the right curve versus left curve thesis. Like every investor is inherently mid-curve. I was a mid-curve. In fact, last cycle I was mid-curve. But there are more people on the right and the left than there are in the middle. And the people on the left automatically become right curved based on the weight of people versus the trade. So at the end of the day, sometimes numbers matter, but right now we're in a sentiment world because sentiment creates content, it creates algorithm creates exposure creates investors. It's not 10K report creates investors right now.
That's super cool.
And like, I'm not a genius, right? I went to film school. I want to make this clear. I did not major in finance, so I can be a complete idiot. But I've seen this in crypto time and time again, that attention begets liquidity. And so the most logical thing to do is be illogical. And the only way to make great illogical moves is to make illogical content, things that make you feel a certain way. Are you angry? Are you sad? Are you happy? Do you feel like you got scammed? Did Logan Paul take away your crypto zoo things, right? These are all things that beget attention liquidity. Luca understands this at Pudgy Penguins. The Cole Ethereum, who, he sold the company, good for him. Cole Ethereum had a complete fucking disaster on his hands, and a bunch of KOL important people. Sorry, am I allowed to curse on your podcast?
Yeah. No
okay, I didn't know. I just was going about it. But Cole Ethereum had a disaster on his hands, and Luca was like, that disaster, that all that attention actually is a great asset to buy because I've actually skipped the step of building a community.
Right.
And so these are all things that like crypto is leaning into harder than the stocks, but it's not to be fooled. The stock market is like this right now. I mean, look at AI. Like AI this cycle is like crypto last cycle, where it is real. AI is real. It's going to be huge, but it's way overvalued. I mean, like, look at the Google AI. You can't even get like a proper white person, like everyone, it's so broken. It's so far behind. It still has a few years to catch up. It's not there yet. That doesn't mean in a year or two, it won't be like the overlord of the world. But right now it's like frothy. I have other takes on AI and where that goes. But actually AI plays a role in my ultimate VC thesis, which we can talk about at the end.
Okay. Why do you think that the stock market is going to become more like crypto? Because I still feel like crypto is its own little world and it's all fun and games. And sure, there's a lot of real products and projects there, but a lot of it is, as you mentioned, kind of illogical craziness. Why do you think the stock market is going to turn more like that, or do you think that the crypto market is going to become more refined over time and turn more like the stock market?
I think they end up blending, so it's yes to both. But there's two things that I see as potential future leading things, right? And I think it's going to be a slow process. One is aging out, right? Like the stocks are all based on traders who went to Wharton or went to Yale, and these are people who didn't grow up with memes. They didn't grow up with YouTube or Facebook even. A lot of the current traders are probably born between the 60s and the 80s, and even some in the 90s. And like their cultural mindset is completely different. Like they grew up in a more serious culture, right? Or their version of culture. Like imagine in 30 years that your stock trader is probably someone who did dance videos on TikTok. Like that's the reality. That's the reality. Like that's
so
what
happy
it is.
I was born a little too late for that, or else I'd probably be dancing.
But think about it. What is the number one desired career field for an American child?
YouTube.
And what do people do on YouTube?
Dance.
Entertain and dance. Yeah. Are they learning about financials?
Maybe
no.
Maybe
some of them. Yeah. But they're learning through like a way different way. So if we're becoming a silly culture, then like, why wouldn't there be silly traders? That's just like the way, that's what I think. And my theory could be completely wrong, but it's just a matter of like, you're a product of your environment, right? Is your environment Wharton, or is your environment a content house with FaZe Clan? Like which one is your environment? And that's not to say that like there won't be serious people. There will be, but I think there'll be less serious people than there are from previous generations.
That's so interesting. That is so interesting. You need to write a blog on that. Like the sillification of society due to social media, due to winning on social media requiring that you be entertaining, which often means being silly.
Look at All In is a perfect example. These are the most serious people in the world, some of the best investors, highly intelligent people. What do? They make a podcast making jokes. And now you have Jason Calacanis turning All In into basically his version of Barstool Sports. Here's another example. I think his name's Harry Stebbs. The 20-second Harry Stebbings. What I think it's called, 20-second or 20-minute VC?
20-minute VC.
20-minute VC. It's all TikTok content. And it's like hype content meets like interesting content. So all these VCs that are happening, like it's a slow progression to where I think it eventually goes. But all these VCs who have extreme deal flow, like it's not like Jason Calacanis is like not getting good deals. He's getting the best deals you can find, right? And he chooses to make a podcast that talks about like Joe Rogan type shit. Why is that? Attention liquidity. The more attention you have, the higher ability you have to upsell a company you've invested in to the next person. It's way better than just sitting behind the scenes. Now, some people do want to sit behind the scenes, and I'm not talking Series B or like IPO type like funds, right? The people who are bringing them to public, but from a seed to Series A standpoint, this is where VCs are going. And a newsletter is just not enough anymore. Like nobody reads them for the most part, right? Your investors will, your LPs will, but larger markets don't. All right, long story because my ADD kicked in. Why do I do content? What's the infrastructure? So we do podcasts, we do Twitter Spaces, we do custom videos, like highly edited videos. I manage other creators for them to do videos. Like if we have a deal and we bring in money, like we'll pay out like almost like an influencer agency. We'll pay them out. I also am now doing more back-end trailer work. You'll see we're doing this live today, but later today I'll have a montage coming out for Shrapnel because we are partnering with Shrapnel. And we're basically doing a FaZe Clan style like hype beast montage. You'll see, it's awesome. Really cool. It's really cool. I'll send it. I know you're an investor there. I think you are, right? I'll send it to you after. It's so badass. Awesome. But we're doing like all these different things because all that attention leads to really good deal flow. That deal flow leads to more content, and it's like this flywheel of content that actually can make money. Because if you want to start as a YouTuber today, you need two things. Either you need 10,000 subscribers to start, or you need to work with a group of people who make content together, because you can't be a solo YouTuber anymore. You will not grow. As a crypto startup, I can't afford to spend money on making like YouTube videos about why World of Warcraft is dead. It's just not, but I can spend money when I get budgets on making original content for people that is an ad, and we disclose that, but it's done in such a unique way that it doesn't feel like an ad. So this is like how I'm able to hire, 3 in-house editors. I have 3 editors that are making videos every day. It's how we have 2 other Spaces guests. It's how I don't even need to sign them, but we have like 20 creators I pay on a regular basis. It's how we can bring in the deal flow. It's just how I'm thinking about acquiring deals, because most people are. So like the normal VC will go to, GDC. For example, I'll be there, right? Well, hopefully I get to meet you there. Are you going to be there?
No.
Okay, well, I'll meet you in my mind, right?
Soon.
So GDC, a lot of investors will go to GC. They're going to look for the next game. They're going to want to write a check. Guess who doesn't have to go to GDC? Asmongold. No, I'm going to go. I still have to go. But Asmongold starts a publishing company called Mad Mushroom. What does he do? He makes content about MMOs all day. And all of a sudden, some startup at GDC goes, we'll take a little bit of money from Jonah, but you know what? We really want Asmongold from Mad Mushroom to write a check here. And so you don't even have to go to events to get proper allocation. You just have to make great content online. And that's what I'm in the business of, is like, how do I make the best content to get the best allocation? In the same way that Jason does that with All In podcast.
That's awesome. That's so cool. Also, your silification kind of thesis. What do you call that?
I just call it silly markets. I don't really have silly an idea for it. Okay. I just call it silly markets.
I want to dig deeper into that. That's such an interesting idea that needs more exploring. But okay, so how are you spending your day? It seems like if you got like you must be unbelievably busy, podcasts and newsletters and.
Yeah, so a lot of it is making sure. Well, first off, like, I make a good living, but I don't make as much as I could be, because I try and pay my people a lot better than the average. Because the only way I'm going to compete with people who are way bigger than me and have more money is if I'm like paying out well. So all the creators that work with me, that they're getting paid way more than the average YouTuber or TikTok. Like I can't tell you the rates because that wouldn't be fair, but
Hmm.
I can tell you that they don't want to go to TikTok they don't want to make Web 2 content because my Web 3 rates are just way better. So that helps because I can't make all the content. I would actually go insane, and I'm getting close to that as it is. But I get up in the morning. I go to Starbucks. I have an espresso machine, but like everyone should realize this. You know what? This is something that I always think about why I like Starbucks. Starbucks is not a coffee company; it's a destination company. So like I'll tell you why. Right, it's a place to go because I have a great espresso machine here, right? And I could have way better coffee. But I work from home, right? I mean, I have an office, but like no one goes to an office anymore other than to pick up their mail and like, do meetings and stuff. But everyone works from home now. I could have my Nespresso machine, or like I could get in my car and like see the outside world for at least an hour and like feel like a human being and then come back. So I actively choose to get the shittier coffee just for the experience of going outside, getting fresh air, playing some music in the car, and allowing myself to like I call it my vegetative state. Like the idea is the less I think, the better my ideas are. So like just getting the coffee, like saying hi to the person that knows I spend a bunch of money there, that gives me content ideas. Like I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if I did like a FaZe Clan like reenactment of Shrapnel and we did like this music video? And by the way, there's original Shrapnel music in the video, which is hilarious.
Oh, awesome.
There's a rapper who did like a Shrapnel rap. So it's like a whole, it's a whole thing.
Wow.
But I'm like, oh, like what a stupid idea that could be like really funny. Like sillification, as you call it. I just call it silly markets. So I do that. I come back. I take a ton of calls in the afternoon. I'll shoot a video. Like I'm always watching YouTube. I'm always watching. So like my strategy for YouTube, which is new, I mainly do Twitter, but I started doing YouTube, is I'll find something a big YouTuber's talking about, like Pow World, and I'm like, all right, how do I connect that to Web3? Because what people forget is like, it's great that you want to talk about Web3, but if you talk about Web3, it's not going to get any search on YouTube because no one else is searching for it. So I go, okay, here's an example. I didn't make this video, but one video was like, this game the next Pow World? And it's like me reviewing Illuvium, right? And I like go into like, but the idea is I'm using Pow World to leech off of the search in order to funnel to Web3 game. So I did this with Shrapnel, which it got a bunch of, like, YouTube is always negative, so I don't care about negative comments, but I did a video said, is this the next Escape from Tarkov? And I like created a very nice thumbnail, had the team do it. And it got like almost 3,000 views, which for a Web3 awesome. Game to have a solo, like people don't realize, like that doesn't sound like a lot, but for a Web3 game in this market, and this was in the bear, it's considered very good.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I knew what I was doing because I know that community and they're out of their minds, right? They're a bunch of Eastern Europeans who just like are crazy for this game. And like, there's gonna be like 20 comments of like, you're so stupid. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like this game looks like, not good, or like Escape from Taco never done. But every time I get a negative comment, the algorithm also knows that hate means that they're watching it for an extra minute. So I'm using that hate to get people to look at the Web3 game because if 20 people comment they hate it, there's 40 people that go, that game doesn't look that bad. Because if there's 3,000 views, but only 20 comments, that means there's 2,980 people who are actually might give this game a shot and go look at the game. So that's how I think about it. But anyway, meetings, make a piece of content. I do our podcast show at night. I send all of the content to an editor in like our Drive folders. And I let my thing with the editors and our artists, because we're doing NFTs, we have an art team as well. I just roll the dice and I hope they make something good. I don't give them any guidance. All I do is I say, I want a cool trailer. I hit my mic. Think of FaZe Clan in the year 2008, and I want like a rap song. And I'm going to give you 5 days to do it. And here's the thing. I only hire one American editor. The other two are Filipino. Mm-hmm. Dude, always hire, whenever you have editors, other than the one guy who I love, hire outside of America. These people work so hard. I pay them well. Like, I'm not going to undercut them. I pay them an American rate. Mm-hmm. So like where they live in the Philippines, they're actually getting whatever overpaid, but I pay American rates. Dude, they make videos as good, if not better, than anyone in America. It's amazing.
It's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, it makes sense because it's a skill that's just like you can be from anywhere and make good.
No,
content,
it does not. Yeah, that's a whole thing in the game industry in general. But yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so how are you intaking all this information? How do you keep up to date with everything? And because it's a huge funnel. You're on YouTube, you're on Twitter, you're on all these places. And then how do you distill that down into, I don't know, theses, because it's like there's so much information. How you're like, okay, Shrapnel's good. They approached me to do a deal. I know about them from Twitter. I want to, like, how are you just distilling all this?
Yeah. So other than the bags in my eyes, you can see I probably just don't sleep a lot. I do sleep, but I guess not good enough. I need one of those 8 sleeps that all the VCs have. But this is where NFTs come into play, which is like my strategy of like funneling. And I can't say how that's going to work, but we can talk offline. But there's a reason to have the NFT community and what this all means. So last January, I created an NFT community called the Real Agents, because Real Agency, they're real agents. I gave those keys out for free. I think they're trading, I don't know, like almost 0.2 or 0.15, somewhere around there right now, which is fine. I'm very happy with that. But the idea was to give it to people I considered interesting individuals who really like Web3 gaming or have an interest in certain things in crypto, and I would give it to them. So now they're in my Discord. We have, of the signups, almost 2,600 people who are like members of the Discord. They don't all chat because that's just not how that works. But of that, like 200 to 300 do chat, which is good. And so what happens is I have an NFT community. And when a project comes to me, like Shrapnel is a perfect example. We did an installation with Shrapnel. Guess what they gave me? Free extraction packs for all of my members, which were on average $40 a piece, right? $20, $40 a piece. So now what happens is I get paid by a client like Shrapnel. I'm making amazing content. I then tell my NFT community about the deal. And I say, by the way, part of that deal is everyone's getting a free extraction pack. They get excited and buy more keys or whatever. But they also give me a bunch of market sentiment feedback. They go, hey, did you hear what happened with Shrapnel there? Or did you know that Shrapnel partnered with this group? Oh, I just bought this XTX whatever token. What do you guys think of it? And so every time I do a deal or every time I'm looking for a new deal, there's always someone in my Discord for free because they're getting value in the basically like whether it's tokens, pre-orders, whitelist, whatever it is. Because we did whitelist with like 40 games last year. Wow. All of which are doing tokens now. So they all made money. Good for my community. But I'm basically having people do market research for me for free on the back end that they're getting value in the NFT that they're holding and they're getting whitelist access. And now it's become more like a proof pass back when people cared about proof pass. So it's like a Web3 gaming proof pass that effectively is my free market research group that I can then use to make content that I get paid on the other side. So wow. I'm building a business where I get paid from a B2B level, but the B2B level always comes with a B2C perk, and I don't have to charge my holders in like a crazy way for those B2C perks because it's basically like it's like if I had a Slack membership and the Slack membership came with like free McDonald's or something. Yeah, that's like the way I see it.
That's so cool. That's so cool. All right, so why? And I know you have an interest in gaming from long before, but why focus on Web3 gaming and not like art or something like that? Because art is a huge ecosystem. It's kind of its own separate players and own separate kind of folks there. Why not art or some other ecosystem other than gaming?
A couple of reasons. One, art is not liquid. I like being in liquid markets. Games are way more liquid than art. Even though I like art, I think art is great. So liquidity is one because I did come from like VCs type stuff. So like liquidity is God in that world, right? So that's one. Two, I've been in gaming for all my life. So it's what I understand more, right? And the saying goes is like, don't spread yourself thin, stick to what you know. The other reason is it actually is a blend of consumerism and art at the same time. So there's that basis. And then the last part is if you ever had a token, there are more reasons for a game to have a token with a real use case than there are for NFTs to have tokens. Now, that's a whole other topic. We talk about it because we have this new ERC 404, which is now fungible NFTs that are different from an 1155. And I'm bullish on that. I think that's going to be massive. And at the time of recording, we have Blast happening today. And that's a whole other thing. So it's not that I don't trade NFTs and stuff. It's that I think that there's more consumer viability in games. Now, I know that Web2 gaming doesn't like it yet. But again, that's largely YouTube saying that. Yeah, you know what also I hear on YouTube? Oh, Madden's horrible. Or like, I don't want to play this sports game. EA just let go 600 people today or yesterday. Guess what they didn't let go? None of the people from the sports franchises. Why? Sports franchises making money. So just because YouTube says they hate Web3 games does not mean that's actually what's happening in the real world. YouTube is not an indicator of what, again, what did I say in the beginning is people, like I said this with DebtMat, the startup that failed, is like just because people believe something is good and should happen does not mean that's the reality of the world. And the same is true for gaming. Just because people believe Web3 gaming in YouTube shouldn't exist does not mean that it won't exist. For example, Asia is very open to that market, is very happy with it. Sports franchises love this idea. EA is really looking at ways to do this. Mobile gaming is in love with this. And in fact, I believe mobile gamers are going to love Web3 gaming. And a lot of our clients now are going straight to mobile because they all are like people who want to earn in the first place. That's why they're on mobiles, because they don't have time to go on console or PC. And in general, you know, I remember when people hated free to play. People hated free to play. Nobody wanted free to play games because they thought like, oh, like it's just a whatever bullshit game. Same thing with Battle Royale. Like there were a lot of haters of Battle Royale. There were a lot of lovers, but there were a lot of haters too. And gamers are always this way, where they hate something for a long time and eventually they get used to it. That doesn't mean the game should be dog shit. Like if you have a dog shit game, your game's, it doesn't matter what you do, the game's ass, right? I agree with that. And that is a point that's very valid. Like a lot of these games suck and like they shouldn't go to Web2 because they don't deserve that space yet. Can't disagree with there. I think the other thing with this Web3 game stuff is that they focus so much on money, and gamers in Web2 focus on illusion. But I think there's a way to mold the idea that they don't exist in the real world. Illusion, right? Like people play games not to
like forget about their troubles and just kind of get sucked in.
Right.
Okay.
Remember that like Web2 gamers who are PC or console, unless they're software engineers, they're probably not making a lot of money because they spend so much time on it. Like their reality is like World of Warcraft existed because you could create a life that you didn't have in the real world that you could experience. That's why people play it. Versus in Web3 is the exact opposite. The idea is this is tied to the real world and it enhances your life or you hurt your life. And so the audience is very different there. I think there'll be games that can cross that threshold, but that's the problem with Web3 games right now, is that they lean into reality when most games traditionally lean into fantasy. And most people who are in the world who don't have a lot of money want to experience fantasy. They don't want to experience a heightened reality. That I think is the core issue, but I think that's changing. And I think there are games that are going to, I hate the bridge the gap term, but bridge the gap. I like NFTs that can make games. Like I'm very bullish on Pudgy Penguins as a person who can create gaming IP. Like they're going to do stuff in Roblox and they're doing Fortnite stuff. I'm bullish on NFTs that can do UGC. Like I'm a huge believer in UGC games. Like I'm putting a lot of money into that, in that belief, because I think that if you build an NFT IP, you're building a culture, and the culture doesn't want World of Warcraft. They just want to play like, I don't know, bubbles and tap the fucking bubble, right? And they just want to be like, and it comes with like a free shirt or something, right? Like I think that's really cool. I'm interested in commercialized experiences there. And I don't call that metaverse. I just call it commercialized experience. But that, yeah, I talked for like an hour there. That's
that was incredible. Okay, so do you think that, because right now there's Web2 gamers, there's Web3 gamers, I would say broadly speaking. Web3 gamers mostly are after money. Web2 gamers mostly after fun. Are we going to see these communities merge in the future? Because I still don't see it. I still don't see that. I do now believe strongly, because before I was like, okay, they're going to merge for sure. It's going to be fun, and you might happen to make money or maybe lose money, whatever. But now I'm like, oh no, I think it's going to be like fantasy sports. People play fantasy sports because it's competitive. It's about money. It's kind of a different aspect to going to play World of Warcraft. You know, World of Warcraft is fun, and as you said, illusion. You want to escape and be in a different world. How do you think this plays out longer term?
I think over the real long term, it assimilates and people will get used to it.
Real long term is in 10 years?
10 to 20 years. But there's still plenty of money to be made between now and then. Like it's not like Web3 game has no marketplace or no market for growth. I
just think it's a different type of it's a different mindset of the users.
Yes.
I think you can go have fun in a regular game, but then also you can go have fun.
Yeah, you can do both. Right. That's why I like mobile. That's why I'm like very into this idea of mobile or UGC, because they both have that inherent capacity of what you're talking about, the idea of the quick game, the quick experience, and then go back to playing Call of Duty if you want. But over the long term, I call it, and this goes into my philosophy of silly markets. So one indicator of silly markets is, one thing is the NFL. Here's a perfect example. 5 years ago, there were no fantasy sports commercials for the NFL. What is it today? What was it in the last Super Bowl?
Yeah. Oh.
Every 5 seconds is betting. Okay. So sports betting is growing through the roof. Stake.com going through the roof. crypto betting through the roof. This is something that's happening both in crypto and in normal markets, both having a theme of betting being a much larger business than it ever was. And it's not because laws have changed that's why that's happening, because people were playing it even if it was illegal. We all know this. So why is that happening? Economic disparity, right? And that's not going away. Like the economic disparity is only going to get worse. That's why people are running to crypto, because it's probably one of the last chances for you to actually like have a shot, right?
So wait, that I believe, but you said economic disparity in terms of increasing gambling. I think just people like to be degenerate and have
no,
have fun.
but yes, but also no. So like my belief, again, it's just my theory. I don't have a lot to back this up yet. But when I look at it and I go, degenerate is a part of it, but why is someone degenerate? Like often people start becoming degenerate not just for fun, but out of a need. But the person who needs it ends up creating fun out of it. And that, again, content can make things unserious. So there's a comedian that is incredible. I'll send you a document, like a 10-minute video about him called Bo Burnham, right?
Oh,
and he's actually an example of like where the world's going. He's trailblazer. I have to send you that. Like there's a reason I think a lot of the way he does. But basically with betting is that the stock market doesn't make sense to people half the time because either they're like GameStop or they just don't want to learn. Betting is another unserious thing where you can have fun while making money. GameStop, you had fun while making money. And even if you lost money, you felt like you were part of a community. Sports betting has a massive community, way bigger than NFTs or Web3. It's huge. And so in silly markets, as economic disparity grows between the wealthy and the poor and middle class dissipates, people are going to believe that the only chance they have, aside from just having natural skills to make it, is to play in the casino. And my friend Naveen, who's also a prolific investor, he calls this the Sky Casino thesis. So the idea is that actually betting in crypto casinos is like the actual product market fit of crypto, not because it's only about betting, but it's actually answering a problem that the normal market has, which is this ability to try and make it beyond what your like economics are. He doesn't really believe that last part, but I believe that last part, but he calls it the Sky Casino. And so I like kind of.
Is there a blog post on that?
No, we just talk all the time on Twitter Spaces, but we call it like the Sky Casino thesis, like sort of like, but that doesn't mean that only Sky Casinos will work. It's just that Sky Casino, the theory of like the casino in the sky, this casino in the blockchain is like an actual product market fit rather than a curse, because people see it as a curse. It's actually not a curse. It's an advantage. Long story short, I think that Web3 gamers and Web2 gamers over the long term merge, because when AI has taken over, there's very little ways to make money. And so how do you make money? Either you're good at the game or you know how to speculate. So that's over the long term. Short term, I think they are separate, but I think that they find ways to merge together in certain intervals. One thing I've noticed is an example of this is esports. So esports is crashed. I think we know this. They're all going to Web3. But so if you look at it from a baseline, what is esports? Esports is crypto gaming in many ways, but they didn't have the tools to make money in it before because they were using, like IP that wasn't theirs, and they were getting, strong armed. So I've seen a lot of esports teams come to Web3 because what is esports? It's making money playing video games. If you look at the core, what it is, what is Web3? Making money playing games. And so there actually is a Web2 market where people want to play games. Otherwise, FaZe Clan wouldn't exist. SOAR wouldn't exist. 100 Thieves wouldn't exist. Every one of these organizations that have millions of followers and their creators have lots of followers all have one thesis: making money playing games. What is Twitch? Twitch is making money playing games. What is YouTube gaming? Making money playing games. Now, the way that they make money is different because they're not sharing a liquidity pool. They're sharing advertising dollars. But those advertising dollars could just go right to a liquidity pool, and they all of a sudden have to play crypto games. So it's not that they're gonna go kicking and screaming and they're gonna hate it, but eventually they're gonna assimilate. I'm not forcing them to assimilate. Like, I'm not targeting them. Like, I don't want people to be forced to play games because then it's not a game. It's not fun. I just think it naturally happens. But I'm very bullish on like the Fortnites and Roblox going into Web3 because they will. Roblox has already said they would. The CEO did say it's happening. I'm bullish on Web3 mobile games because they already play that way. Very bullish on sports in Web3, like fantasy. Very bullish on betting and crypto gambling where legal, right? I'm not advocating for illegal betting. And I'm bullish on NFTs as a way to acquire users and understand your market of consumers. Like, those are the things playing the long game on personally.
It's amazing. That aligns with so much of how we think at Fermion. So yeah, no, that's we have very similar thoughts and theses around that for sure. Very cool. All right. Who within Web3 gaming do you think is doing a great job? And who do you think is doing a poor job? Or should I say needs improvement, we'll say.
So in terms of like as a creator, as a game developer, like how do we
as a game company?
All right, so everything I'll say will be biased. So like that, like it doesn't mean I have all the right answers. One of my clients, and you're also one of their investors, I believe, is Nifty Island. So I'm going to be biased. And again,
I mean, but we're both biased in this, but you can't even. They're crushing it.
Right, they're crushing
I am shocked. And we're investors, and I'm shocked at the product. I was like, I cannot believe it's this good.
Yeah,
because it's Web3, and you're like, it's going to be some kind of bad version of Roblox, but it is like incredible. And again, we're biased, but
so like I'll tell you, like when I say good or bad, it does not mean it has no relevance to whether they make money or not, right? Because making money is, you can be a bad person that makes a lot of money, you can be a good person that makes no money. So we're going to separate the money making part aside, right? So I won't talk about that, but I'm strictly talking from a marketing standpoint, and I'm not even talking gameplay. Because we can go about gameplay, and I think Nifty Island's going to need some improvements. And I've talked to Charles about like where I think this should go, and we align. His long-term plans, I think, are fantastic. That's why I like working with him. That's why I wanted to take him as a client. But what Charles did as a marketing strategy that we reinforced, but it really was his original idea, we just helped create stuff around it, is the idea of a game that isn't building its own identity, but it's a game that is an ode to every NFT and helping them build a community themselves. And I think that is something that a lot of games have taken notice to, because a lot of games that raise in Web3, they're like building their own IP, building their own NFTs, and I'm sure they'll have their own stuff, but they build things that are about them. And the problem with that is you have to now convince someone who's like a Pudgy Penguin owner to want to spend time on a game that's about an IP that's not related to them. And that's really hard to do. That's not to say that's wrong. Like I think Shrapnel is fantastic, and that's what Shrapnel is doing, but it's a very different game than what Charles is doing. And the idea of acquiring audience share by adopting someone else's community and building a game around that, like the Mario Party thesis, I think is like very bullish, because you spend a lot less money acquiring customers. And if you have a really good gameplay style, you basically have brand advocates at like no cost. We call it earned media, right? Like that earned media is very valuable. So that was a client. And I think we're doing another thing with them. We're re-upping with them because they want to do more. But that's one where I think they're doing it right. Will that mean that they're a national success? I don't know. But they have the right idea. And I think that idea should be employed in more games in this space, because it would create a better ecosystem of people and participants. So that's one that's doing it right. One that's doing it bad, I'd be careful, because I like in the bear. So I
needs improvement, not bad.
So I call this my bear market arc and my bull market arc. Something like fell here, but in the bear market, I am very critical of people because one, it's important for attention, and two, I want them to be better to prepare for the bull. Like it's not just to do that to shit on someone. I do it for a reason. In the bull market Jonah arc, which is my current arc, I rather than say, oh, this game is bad, what I now say is like, oh, I don't know about that game, but here's what I'm actually interested in. That's like how I divert it. But one that needs improvement is obviously Bored Ape Yacht Club, right? I think needs improvement. I don't think that they're going away. I don't think they're gonna. If you hear my dog, I apologize. Something went off outside. Well, can you hear it?
Barely.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's a problem, we can like cut it out. But cool. She's going nuts over something that was banging outside. But anyway, the thing with Bored Ape Yacht Club is that they have a problem of like understanding their community. And I know why they're doing it. The dichotomy is like most Bored Apes don't want to play these games, specifically the other side. And I know that when this video goes out, people are going to be like, that's not true, Jonah. I've taken the temperature. I've talked to many apes. Many of them, all they want is a clubhouse in real life. And they want to go to yacht parties and they want to go to festivals. Like, in fact, I think Yuga, our Bored Ape Yacht Club, is more of a music company than actually it is a game company. Because what is it, like Ape Fest Hong Kong, which is music and like dance parties and like club hangouts. The one in New York was dancing, music, and hangouts. The guy who's now running Bored Ape Yacht Club, which is I forget his name, Jeff, but he's former Live Nation. He literally worked in music. He's a music guy. The and this one, and I'll say this openly, I don't like this guy as a person. I think he's a bad person. But Illa, who's their lead community lead at Yuga, he was in rap. He was a record producer. It's all music people. So it's a bunch of music people making games when it should be like gaming people making games. But so like that's what the community wants, more music stuff. Now, they can work in gaming. I think other side is going to be so many more years of work. And I think that's like the thing that's really hurting them. But I do think their move into doing mobile is the right move, and they should lean fully into that. Like just only do mobile. I think it can be fixed. I think it can be solved. But generally, thus far, they just haven't listened to their community in a meaningful way. That doesn't mean I'm bearish Yuga, and I think it'll be fixed. But yeah, it's just like, how do you have all these people who work in music now representing like gaming? And I think they know this now, right? Like Daniel Legre stepped down, like they're now doing a Bored Ape Yacht Club LLC. I think they finally understand that, but it just doesn't make sense to me. Well, it does make sense. I'll tell you why they did it. Here's why. So like you look at Soho House. I think Soho House is a public company. But if you look at, because if you pull up their website, it does go over their financials. If you have someone like Andreessen Horowitz investing millions of dollars into Yuga Labs, you need like the 10 to 100x, right? Like what's going to make more money? Is it going to be running a Soho House model where your limit is like, I don't know, I'm just making up numbers, right? I don't have the real numbers. Let's say 5x. Like if you're Andreessen, you're like 5x, that's baby, what is this, a pump for ants? Like we're in crypto. Like if it's not doing 100x, well, I'm not putting money into this, right? But like what has 100x potential? Games. They always do. Literally look at Portal Token today. They don't even have a game. And like look at the multiples on people who put in on the VC round. It's like, I don't know what the multiple is, but it's like a Yuga level deal, right? It's like getting Bored Apes early. And they don't even have a game. So the thesis is right, but the group that's doing it originally was wrong. I think that's like the problem. But I think they're fixing it, and I think it'll get better. My handlers are going to get upset that I said this publicly, but that's okay. I don't really care.
Have to agree on a few items. It's like Soho, like a club model. I don't think Soho House is a good business. I think
they're dying
in financial trouble.
But that's the problem. That's like the community of Yuga of Bored Ape
only
wants Soho House, but you can't be a company that survives being a Soho House. So it's like
you can't raise at a $4 billion valuation and do Soho House. Right.
So it's like they know what they have to do, but it requires burning some holders to do it. There's no other way. There's no other way. So like I think they're on the right path. I think they're making the right choices, but it's a tough road ahead. It's going to be a lot of work.
Do you see other side? They just released some sneak peeks yesterday or maybe this morning. What'd you think?
Doesn't look bad, but
I was pleasantly surprised.
I mean, it's boring because there's no gameplay there yet, but they're not pretending there is, right? So I can't fault them for that. Whoever they hired as the environmental designer is very good. Great environmental design. Music was good. I think the set pieces were good. Looks good. The problem for them is that unless it looks like GTA 6, these holders are never going to be happy. Like there's nothing that they could build out of this thing where the holders go like, I got my money's worth. Because in their mind, they're like, you raised X amount of dollars. Why doesn't this look like a Rockstar game? And normal people don't understand what it takes to make a game. It doesn't matter if you raise $1 billion. You know how many devs there are in the world that have the technical skill to make a GTA 6? It's like there's no amount of money that you could acquire to acquire those devs. Because in order to make a GTA 6, you have to hire their devs. And do you think GTA 6 devs who've been working on a game for 12 years are leaving GTA 6 and leaving their stock package? No fucking way they're leaving that company. Especially when they know it's going to make, GTA 6 is going to make billions of dollars. Look, if it flops, then that will be very bad for the market.
There's no way.
I don't think it will. I don't think it will. But if GTA 6 flopped, the gaming market's going to don't hold stocks in games if that happens, because the entire market will go down. But I don't think it's going to happen because they're the first game I think that's had a $2 billion budget. And that's insane. That's not really marketing.
Just the budget to make the game.
I think the game is $1 billion something to build, and then they're putting another $1 billion in marketing is what I've heard. I don't know if that's true. I can't confirm that.
But they don't need $1 billion in marketing. Like everyone's going to play it.
Yeah, but you first off, if you play GTA 5, they had the rap radio. So I'm sure I bet there are rappers right now making albums exclusively for GTA 6 where they'll have a whole rap album, like some Lil Yachty type guy who has an album completely in GTA 6 that releases in GTA 6 because you have the radio. I bet there's fashion companies that have fashion designs being built just for GTA 6 is the closest thing to metaverse outside of Fortnite and Roblox. It's not gonna. It's unlikely to be other side. Now, there's this whole thing where people go, "It's Jonah. It's not a metaverse because the assets aren't interoperable." I don't believe in that thesis. I don't really care about that. All I care about with metaverse is, can you have a Shopify style experience where your game world is now your website? That's all that matters to me when I look at metaverse. Like, would you go to www.walmart.com, or are you going to go to Walmart store in Roblox? If users start going to Walmart store in Roblox, that is by definition metaverse to me, because the metaverse, and a simple definition, forget about the decentralization and the token shit, like put all that aside. It is all that the metaverse is the 3D visualization of the internet. Doesn't matter how it happens. So if that starts happening, that's a metaverse. That's all it is for me.
All right. What do you think are the biggest issues that Web3 gaming is facing, or facing, or about to face? Just the issues.
Well, one, most of the games are not good yet, and that's not a money problem. Again, it's the same problem the other side has. Is like, you can raise as much money as possible, but there are only so many very talented developers in the world. So I think most of the games that are going to say they're Web3 AAA are going to die. Maybe 2 or 3 survive. Like, I think Shrapnel is going to make it. I'm biased, right? Like, the reason I want them as a client is I think they're going to make it. If I'm wrong, then so be it. But most games that are AAA Web3 are dead. Done. Like, millions and millions and millions of dollars wasted. It's a very unfortunate, but that's how that works. Why? Because, like, here's the thing. If I have Call of Duty and I have Web3 Call of Duty, why don't I just play Call of Duty? Like, what's the point? Like, this is the thing that retail and investors keep saying, and they don't understand gamers. Gamers, until something bad happens, don't actually care about owning their assets. Like, they don't give a shit. Like, they don't care. If that was the case, CSGO would have had a blockchain like 10 years ago. Why is it that CSGO 2 has more volume than it's ever had in its 12-year span, 20-year span, and it doesn't use a blockchain? People just trade on like their centralized networks. Another example, Call of Duty Warzone. Warzone 2 meant that all the assets that you bought from Warzone 1 are dead. People bitched for like 3 weeks. And yes, it is a problem. But the minute Warzone 2 came out, player numbers shot. Now, it's not as big as Warzone 1, but that's not because of the asset transfers. It's because it's like, it's Warzone, right? Whatever. Gamers don't actually care about owning their shit. They only care about it when they can make money, or they care about it when the game they love finally dies. So all these Web3 games using asset ownership as a marketing ploy, dead. Fucking dead. Kill them all. They're gone. Dude, game's dead. Doesn't matter. No one cares about that. Other things that I think will die. I think a lot of NFT projects making their own games, other than I think Sappy Seals has a chance, because like they have the degen economy, so I think they'll probably do well. NFT companies that are making their own games are going to die, other than Pudgy Penguins and Sappy Seals. And I think Azuki is different because they're doing like interactive show. It's not really a game. It's like a hyper quick mobile. But NFT companies should just be building a Roblox, Fortnite, or a Nifty Island type things. That's all they should do. They should never try to make a game beyond that. Anyone who does, send it to zero. It's probably going to die because you don't have the skills to do that. You need UGC. Good things. Indie mobile, or indie in general, I think has a great shot because the expectations are so low that when a decent game comes out, it just fucking skyrockets and then hits like normal market. So low expectations, high value is a recipe for virality. Games that are actually fantasy, like you said, I think are going to do very well. All right, this is like, I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I'll tell you, I don't necessarily believe in on-chain games. I really don't.
Really?
I don't.
Okay.
I think it's bullshit. So let me tell you why. So the reason that there are some good reasons for of all the on-chain people I believe in, it's probably he goes by Captain Kicks or Speculator Art, but Tilt Yard. I believe in that because his reasons for doing it are actually a Web 2 use case, not for the sake of doing it. Most on-chain games are complete dog shit. And the reason they're doing it, and you don't know this unless you work in the business, which you do, is a blockchain is not going to write you a large grant check unless they have more on-chain transactions because the chains don't actually give a fuck about games. What they give a fuck about is volume, so that way BlackRock is going to write more money into their L2 token. That's all they give a shit about. So what is the one way to do that? Well, if everything's on-chain and there's transactions, it looks like we have a really active network. And all the hedge funds go, oh, look at that. You have a large network. Let's write let's take a big chunk of it. And so the on-chain games beget liquidity. Liquidity begets like bigger games. So on-chain games themselves are dog shit for the most part, but they help fund real games. So they're basically cannon fodder. There will be some on-chain games that work, and I think maybe in the long run they do. But again, it's like this theory of asset ownership. No one actually gives a fuck. Like a normal person who plays games to make money does not give a shit if the game is on-chain. They don't give a fuck. I'm sorry, I'm cursing, but I've been saying this to people. I'm like, no one cares. So I believe in it from a funding mechanism. I don't believe in it as a actual consumer product, unless it's fantasy betting. Like on-chain fantasy sports, I do believe in. Like on-chain gambling, I do believe in. But on-chain games that have an IP or that an experience, don't believe in it.
I just see it as a different genre. Like, there's like,
but there's not enough players for the genre to exist.
Not quite yet, but the average revenue, the average spend per Web3 gamer is like outrageous, right? Yeah. So you don't need that many people to make something, sustainable. I just see it as like, some people are in Animal Crossing, some people like GTA, some people like this thing, I see on-chain gaming as almost like a puzzle game.
I agree with that if that's the game. If you're telling me you're building an on-chain puzzle game, I would invest in that idea. I think that's a great idea. I have no problem with like what Tiltyard's doing, where they're making it very clear it's like on-chain sports betting with like AI. I believe in that. I think on-chain AI games, very cool. My problem is when I see on-chain games that are like, we're building an open world and like the assets are on-chain. Like no one gives a shit. But if it's like on-chain AI horse racing, on-chain, puzzle like Sudoku, like an on-chain Sudoku, I think would do very well. I actually think like I would probably put money into that over something more complex. On-chain games as a funding mechanism that chains can use to get more liquidity, and like casino. I believe in those, but a lot of on-chain games that get pitched to me are like, here's like a dungeon and like press X to get the dungeon and you'll roll for like a decent asset. I'm like, this is really boring. Like, and there's not enough earn here for me to want to keep playing it.
No, makes sense. All right. You mentioned earlier your AI VC, and we're thank you for extending your time here. I appreciate it. AI VC thesis. You mentioned that earlier. I want to hear that.
So I think VCs ultimately go extinct. So like they no longer have a use case. And I have a couple of reasons as to why, but that doesn't mean VC and investments die. But I believe every agency today becomes a VC. So let me explain. I have a couple of points to this of what I consider like my evidence. That doesn't mean it's the objective evidence, but what I'm seeing in the market that leads me to have this thought in my mind. And a lot of VCs will think I'm an idiot for saying this. One, because it's hard to see into the future. And two, because it affects their jobs if I say stuff like this. So they're going to say that I'm stupid for saying this. But let me elaborate. Sign number one, Night Media. Do you know what Night Media is?
Yeah, it's Mr. Beast's management co.
Okay. What did maybe do you know about the history of Night Media at all?
Night Ventures.
Night Ventures. Okay. So what is the model there? They have the best talent in the world that's making a lot of money. They take a part of their money every month or every quarter, every year, and they allocate it into Night Ventures LP. So they have their own LPs. I mean, they bring in outside LPs too, but they have mainly their own LPs, which is like the Mr. Beast. And they go and write checks. Now, if you're a startup company and you have an option to, option A is a traditional VC, they write great checks, they're very good people, and they have a network with other companies. So they're like good. That's option A. Option B is Night Ventures. They have the same amount of capital. They have on-staff talent. They have in-house marketing. And if they really like your product, there's a chance that Mr. Beast is going to shout it out in a video with like 40 million to 100 million views. If you're a startup company with a consumer product, I'm talking consumer, right? We can talk about tech, deep tech. I do think that changes too. But so consumer side, which VC do you pick? If you only could pick one, right? Assuming you could only pick one.
You want the built-in audience.
Right, built-in audience, because attention, liquidity, and silly markets, right? Silly markets need attention, liquidity, therefore influencers become VCs, is my first thesis. So that's thesis number, that's like evidence one is Night Ventures, and a lot of agencies are now doing the same thing. They've started copying them. Sign two, AI. If AI, every year, OpenAI is going to have their demo day, and every year, like 500 startups are going to die. Because last year it was text. This year it's video. How many video companies and video have just been annihilated when they showed that video demo like a few weeks ago? I forget the name of it, but you saw it, right? Mm-hmm. So every year that AI gets better is another year that VCs have less investment options. So on the deep tech side, how many more deep tech things can you invest in? There's space. I think space is still going to need very experienced people.
Super bullish on space.
Right. Space is very good because we need resources. I think, AI itself, but again, how many VCs get access to good AI deals? And maybe like deep energy, like energy tech. Like I think I'm bullish on energy tech. I think we still need that stuff, like the nuclear and all that stuff. But all of these SaaS companies that I would call middle tech, which are not high tech, like if you're going to invest in a space company, you probably need to have worked at NASA. So there's such a threshold for VC value there that it's okay to not be a consumer facing company. But if you're like Salesforce, do you really need to have a degree from MIT and have the greatest experience in the world? Because what happens is AI is going to automate all this shit. So there's a whole market of VC LP backed entities that are investing in companies that are going to have, you're going to have less and less optionality every year. At least that's my thesis. I could be totally wrong. So again, it's the whole thing of silly markets of left to right curve. So all mid-curve VCs, meaning mid-curve thesis companies, die automatically. So you either have to invest in fucking silly putty or invest in space rocks because AI killed the middle. That's my thought. Yeah. So that's like sign number 2 is this AI stuff killing companies every year. Sign number 3 is Andreessen Horowitz. They have a lot of access to data and information. Why is it that they're now including content creators as a part of VC partnerships or VC deal flow? Co-Carnage,
Packy
McCormick, like all these people who have audience who are smart, but they're now seen as marketing experts. Andreessen's not dumb. If they thought there wasn't a model for that in the future, they wouldn't be starting the process of actually looking more like a publisher than a VC. All of a sudden, their games branch is a publisher. It's not a VC. So that's my sign number 3. And sign number 4 is myself. For myself, as someone who's worked in this space, I'm getting more deal flow today from top companies like on paradigm level type investments or Andreessen level investments. I get more deal flow from that running a pseudo growth agency than I ever did running SPVs. And that would be sign number 4, which is when consumers have access to deals in the same way that VCs do, VCs no longer have an advantage. So here's an example, Reddit. Reddit's IPO now looks like a DAO. So you're now telling me that securitized companies like Reddit are now raising more like a crypto company than they are like previous IPO companies. So all these examples are leading me to believe that unless a VC knows how to operate like an agency or a high growth company and has like real venture studio experience, a company that just raises an LP is dead in the water in like a 10-year span, right? I'm not today, not tomorrow, not for the next 2-3 years, but in 10 years from now, I don't think VCs exist in the way that we look at it today. Either it's a highly specialized tech company, like a space tech company that has a space VC branch, or you're an influencer agency group that has consumer advantage and you invest in SaaS, consumer SaaS, and you invest in consumer CPG. And that's why you see Jason Calacanis doing all in. That's why you see the Alex Sohanian making YouTube videos. That's why I'm running an agency. That's why you do Zima Red. 10 years ago, nobody did podcasts or content when they ran a VC. So it just feels like, and I could be wrong, that VC is a dying model that is evolving into something else. And it's one of these things.
That's so super cool. Yeah, I agree with you that in order to maintain an edge, you need to have, you can't just have capital. Capital is like abundant now. So you need to have some other value add, and audience for consumer companies is huge. So totally agree with that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Well, Jonah, this has been absolutely amazing, but it's time for the closing questions.
Okay.
All right. What are you bearish on?
Music NFTs.
Why?
Because like I can get it on Spotify for like nothing. Why would I? like a game asset is different because you can't buy a game asset on Spotify and like look at it on your phone and be like, oh wow. Like a game asset you can use in a game. So it's different, right? Or an NFT IP, like a Pudgy Penguin, I can look at and it does different things. I don't know what a music NFT does for me right now. I do like this idea of what Blau was doing with Royal, where it was like distributions. I just think that like there's so much red tape around it that I'm not going to put money or time into it. I'll let people like Blau do that. And when Blau figures it out, then I'll like, be behind him in some way. Right. But music NFTs for sure. What else am I bearish on? Man, there's not like that much I'm bearish on. I mean, as I said, parts of on-chain gaming, I'm kind of bearish on. Not much. I mean, in a bull market, it's hard to be bearish on anything because again,
Yeah.
irrationality means everything goes up.
Right.
I'm
Well, so
bearish, I'm sort of bearish on the idea of Web2 games coming to Web3 to then start a
interesting.
token because I think they are like Web2 thinks so differently that like if you have someone who previously worked there bringing a Web2 IP into Web3, they can't think in the way that you need to think in order for it to succeed. And I've worked with many clients and I've had Web2 clients and quite frankly they're the worst I've ever worked with. And I won't name names, but the reason is not because the game that they built was bad, it's because they had no way of creating a framework for understanding how to make a game in the space. Now, the end consumer could be a Web2 person, but the way you construct a Web3 game or Web3 company is very different than how you construct one in Web2. And the returns are different and the distributions are different and your investors are different. And I find that the threshold to learn that, unless you do it on your own first, is very hard. Very hard.
That makes sense. All right. What are you bullish on?
Obviously, Web3 gaming. Now, I could be totally wrong. We'll find out. But I think that if you look at all the layoffs in Web2 and you see the growth in Web3, you're seeing things slowly shift. Bullish on AI. It's hard to not be. Like AI and blockchain, I think, even if it's a narrative and we don't know what it looks like yet, I think there's some way where they merge together. Bullish on media and content. Not bullish on independent influencers. I think independent influencers, unless they already have an audience, slowly die.
Wait. Sorry. What do you mean independent influencers?
People who are in the 0 to 10,000 threshold who want to make content on their own, because they're hard to invest in for a couple of reasons. Eventually, AI will get good enough to replace them in let's say 5 to 10 years. So for me, I think that what esports got right was not the way they make money, but the way they made content together. They got that right. So I'm bullish on communities that make content together. Like as much as I don't like parts of DGods and what Frank is doing, what he has nailed right is a community of people who do like making content around the experience. So I'm bullish on that. Bearish on independent creators who are making content in Web2 and don't like form an organization to grow together. Because if you don't form a group to grow together, it's almost impossible to grow anymore. You have to grow as one unit. And then once the unit grows, then you can separate and do your own independent stuff. But I think that's where it all, I mean, look at Mr. Beast again, perfect example. Like Chandler, all of his entourage, like they still make content as one unit. But now that they're successful, Chandler does his own stuff a little bit. The other guy, I'm forgetting his name,
Carl,
thank you. Carl is a Twitch streamer and he has his own stuff. Like they all do their own thing, but they still come together for like these headline videos where they're like doing one big thing together. And I think that Mr. Beast was right in that because you can't be solo anymore unless you're a very rare personality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a Jinxie. I don't know if you know who he is.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Okay, like Jinxie is such a rare personality that he can be independent, or Kai Cenat, he could be independent, or like the problem is if you think about being a content creator like that, you'll never be that creator because they were born being ridiculous in the best ways. Like you can't teach those things. You can teach it to a degree. Like you can go from here to here.
You can't fake it.
Yeah, you can go from here to here and gain your experience being silly. But Jinxie went from here to here because he just naturally was that type of weirdo. Like, totally. Right? So, yeah, that bearish on independent people, bullish on like coalesced groups of people.
That's awesome. Okay. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received?
I can tell you what my father tells me, the two sayings that he tells me, but then I can give you my own lessons that I've learned. My father, growing up, he said, you know, it doesn't matter what you do in life as long as you try to be the best at it. So like he basically was saying, you know, not that this is like a bad job to have, right? There are honorable people who do it, but if you wanted to work in the garbage disposal industry, I'll support you, but you better be the best at it, right? So it doesn't matter what you do, just try and be the best at it, and like be focused. The other thing my father always tells me, which has worked so far in business and in life, is pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. You don't need to be a billionaire or even a centimillionaire to be a success. You could be very happy making a meaningful amount of money. And if the people around you are making a lot of money, eventually you're bound to have a lot of success because, and this is what actually like I can say this because white culture is very bad at this. White culture is very bad at sharing the money with like their friends, like, you know, but a lot of other cultures are very good at that. And that's why a lot of them, you know, have seen success today is like they eat together as a group. And so I believe in eating together as a group, sharing the money and like bringing friends up with you to be a success. What I learned myself having some failures early on with this company and past companies is unless you have a lot of money, do not build a company based on what you think the market can be. Because a lot of VCs will tell you that because that's what their advantage is that if they're right, if a VC will tell you to be the next Uber because if you happen to do that, they make a ton of money. But the odds of you doing that are very, very low, right? And VCs expect you to fail. That's the VC model traditionally. I used to think like that, where I thought like the student debt thing, right? I was wrong in the way I thought because unless I was like Andreessen backed, it was never really going to happen. My new model, which has been working for me ever since, is build a business based on what the market is asking for. So, for example, I didn't start out doing a growth company that serves clients. I wanted to do SPVs, thinking that was the model. And it's still a good model, but I made a podcast and someone said, hey, can we pay you and you can consult us? And I decided, I'm like, you know what? If that's something that the market wants, I'm going to create a business around that. And now we're doing way more money than I've ever done, you know, in terms of cash flow, right? Not like total returns, but just like monthly cash flow is way outsized compared to what I was doing before. And my investors and now my investors are happy I did that. They're like, wow, like we're looking at your returns. Like this is really good for like what you've raised. And so if you're building a business or you're building anything, look at what the market is asking for and ask yourself, can I create something that answers those needs? And I think that maybe you don't get your 100x, but you certainly make enough money to get ready to make your next 100x move.
I love that. That's awesome. All right, last question. What motivates you?
I'm going to die at some point. That's about it. What motivates me? Two things. I am not a morning person. And if I fail, I'm going to have to get up at 7 a.m. and go get a job. And I would prefer getting up at 9:30 or 10 in the morning. So sleeping in motivates me. My laziness motivates me. My desire to want to be lazy.
That's so funny.
But the other thing is, I don't know, like, so everyone, like, I often have haters online. They're like, oh, like, he's so unserious.
Haters are great, by the way.
Yeah.
That means that you're doing something right.
Yeah.
No, I wish I had more haters.
Well, don't worry. I can teach you because
Okay,
I have a lot
Please.
now. But everyone, you know, I'm 28 now. I'll probably die, let's assume healthcare doesn't get better. Let's assume it stays the same. I probably die between the age of 75 to 85. My grandfather, rest in peace, lived to be 97, but that's very rare. Sorry, 93. Was it 97? It was 97. Whatever. He fought in World War II, so it was a long time. He lived a long time. Recently passed away. But based on my genetics, I expect I probably die between 70 and 85 on average. So I probably have another 50 good years if I'm lucky, assuming healthcare doesn't get better and then I live longer. So I assume when I die, I'm not going to remember any of this. Or if I do, like it's like kind of like a video game. So like the reason I'm an honest person is that like when I'm dead, I'm not going to remember anyway. Or if I do remember and be like, well, that was fun, you know, go on to whatever the next thing I do in the next life. So I just like, the reason I'm unserious and I believe in unserious markets is because life has to be unserious. If you're nobody makes it in the end, right? That's the saying. So that's a motivator. Why not try doing stupid? You know, like when I asked ApeCoin for $20 million in public for fun, I knew I was going to get haters, but I'm like, maybe they do it. Yeah. You know what? And you know what? When I look back on that in 50 years, people are going to be like, this crazy motherfucker said, I want $20 million. And they said yes. But you know what happened? I asked for $20 million. They said, fuck no. But another DAO was like, what about $200,000? I'll pay you for that. And I got $200,000 to serve other clients. So, you know, I made money and it was funny and people remember me. So whatever.
That's awesome. I love that. Jonah, man, this has been incredible. Thank you so much. And if people want to find out more about yourself, more about your company, where should they go?
Well, the sites are all being reworked, so I'm not going to link those yet because they're like really outdated now that we're reforming everything. But my Twitter @RealJonahBlake, LinkedIn, Jonah Blake. That's about it. That's and YouTube. You can if you write a hateful comment on YouTube, I'll probably respond. That's another one. So @RealJonahBlake on YouTube.
Awesome. All right, man. Thanks so much for coming on.
No problem. Thanks for having me.